Hi, I'm Rebecca Bradley. This is the Virtual Crime Book Club. It is Monday, the 10th of March, 2025. Today, we are discussing Black Reed Bay by Rod Reynolds, and we are lucky enough to have Rod here with us today. So, thank you for joining us, Rod. Um, there will be spoilers involved in this conversation, so everything is on the table. Everything that happened, we will discuss. If you haven't
Course.
yet, if you are watching, and there are some spoilers. Um, Mel's here. Mel, I was just telling
Hi.
we have Australia logging in. What time is it?
Hi. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. It is 7:03 a.m. It's just getting light here.
Right. I said it depended on the time zones because sometimes it's 5 a.m.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. So yes, if you are watching this as a catch-up video, be aware that there are some dramatic spoilers that are going to be discussed in this video. So if you're partway through the book, you maybe want to finish it first or read it if you haven't read it yet, because it is great. So we've got Rod here. Thank you for joining us this evening, Rod. We'll only keep you about 15 minutes. I say that sometimes it knocks on to about 20. Um,
That's no problem. Thanks
we
very much for having me.
No, I'm so glad you could make it. And it was short notice, as usual, when I get in touch with anybody. I'm a bit unorganized. I don't know how I managed to run these things. So, quick blurb about Rod. Rod is the author of 6 books, which The Guardian have called pitch perfect American noir. He has also been longlisted for the CWA Steel Dagger for Thriller of the Year. Um, So, Black Reed Bay, you didn't make this very easy on yourself, having it from a female point of view and set in the US when you are based in the UK and very clearly a male author. Um, Tell me the decision making process in deciding those two things.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a bit stupid when it comes to picking my characters and my moments. My first book was set in 1945 in on the Texas-Arkansas border, which I'd never been to, and despite how I might look if you catch me on the wrong morning, I was not alive in 1945 either. So it was only when I started on that I kind of thought, what am I doing here? This is, I grew up in sort of pretty central London, spent most of my life there, so. Yeah, I guess flip it around. I've always been willing to take on a challenge. With this one, the book prior to this, I wrote kind of dual protagonists, one male, one female, and I really enjoyed having that dynamic and that kind of challenge for myself. So I thought I was going to take it whole hog with this one and go with a female protagonist. I will say, I mean, I grew up in my house. It was my mum, my 2 sisters, big Irish family. I've got a billion aunts and cousins, most of whom are women. So I thought I could at least draw on some of that insight from back in the day. But yeah, drawn to the challenge. I like to try and push myself with each book and do something new. So that was kind of where it came from on this one.
What differences did you find in writing a female protagonist? Because I have read the first book in the 1940s series you've done, which I remember mostly as a male protagonist. Did you find any differences in creating those characters? Other than,
Yeah, I mean, I heard a brilliant writer who I think you probably know, Stuart Neville, answer this question once. He was sort of it was put to him on a panel. How did you find it writing a female protagonist? And he said, well, you know what, it was quite easy. It was almost like writing people. And I thought, yeah, exactly. It's not that
yeah,
hard when you kind of set your mind to it. In a way, it was really liberating, in all honesty, because obviously as broad and as different as the crime thriller genre is these days, there's still an expectation that your male protagonist is going to be to some extent the kind of, steely hero who's a bit kind of indefatigable and all that stuff. And I didn't, I've written a few of those characters. I've certainly read enough of those books, and I wanted to write someone a bit different. And I just felt it was easier to create a character who was believably very vulnerable, very exposed in that situation, purely by the fact that not through any fault of her own, but just because of the fact that she's a woman working in an incredibly male-dominated and male-orientated profession, particularly in the States, where we know, cops have certainly have a reputation for being a bit gung-ho. So I just really wanted to play with that to take someone who doesn't have the kind of physical imposing characteristics that you might perhaps sort of need or expect in that area, and kind of put them in that situation, because then you're immediately creating that kind of underdog dynamic, if you like, where as well as having to try and catch the bad guys and stay alive and not get killed herself, she's battling prejudice, misogyny, sexism, even if it's just on a casual basis because of the way it's kind of built into the system. So, um, yeah, it was a challenge, but it was a release in the sense that you don't have to create this, yeah, you're kind of cowboy with the white hat, kind of, no problem is too great and very sort of doesn't sort of voice his feelings or emotions or anything. So,
Mm.
yeah, in all honesty, it was really fun to write Casey, and I hope that comes through in the character and in the writing.
Yeah, I enjoyed her actually. Did you have any concerns going in? I know Stuart said it's just writing people, but there's a lot of chatter on the internet, which there always is, about male writers writing female protagonists. Women bouncing boobily downstairs is a common one you often hear talked about. Did you have
Yeah.
concerns?
I will say that that was, I don't know if it was just probably slightly less visible. So I started writing this book in 2019, and I'd say that has become a bit more of sort of not saying more of a thing, but certainly more like the internet chatter has probably blossomed a bit since then. But I was definitely aware of it and 100% kind of determined to avoid any of that kind of stuff. Partly because I think it's offensive, partly because I think it's just lazy writing, bad writing, and partly obviously because it's just not it's not the real world. And while I wouldn't claim to be writing documentary style books. At the same time, I always like them to, they're always based on a certain element of real life, and I always like them to at least reflect the real world as much as possible. So yeah, that was absolutely on my mind. You know, the thought of bouncing boobly downstairs it just makes you cringe to even think of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's one thing to kind of make a mistake in your attempts to kind of draw your characters and get it wrong. We're all culpable of that as authors, but some of the examples like that one and then the other sort of famous ones, you think, how could you possibly write that and think it was a good line, So
Yeah, yeah. Um, you mentioned her vulnerability and that she has to save herself and stuff. There is a very big difference, I think, between UK policing and US policing. For instance, the very obvious one is that they carry guns.
Mm.
Um, how did you go about researching the US side of the book,
Yeah, I
police
mean that was actually
wise?
that was one of the bigger challenges for me because I've got a bit of a confession, which is that I don't really love procedurals myself, and I'm particularly not drawn to the that aspect of it, of kind of having everything absolutely nailed on. Um, I've always been more interested in kind of, so previously I've never written police officers partly for that reason. I've always been more interested in the historical facts and the realities of the case and kind of characters and that kind of thing. So that was a bit of a decision to make. So I did actually end up speaking to a police officer who was at the time serving in the States, and he kind of went through the manuscript a couple of times for me, which was really, really helpful because obviously you can do your research online and I've read a couple of books and you can kind of pick up bits and pieces along the way as you need to fill in the holes. But as with anything, there's nothing like having an actual expert who's lived and breathed it to go through it. And it was quite a humbling process to get it back the first time with kind of like, he's a policeman, he's not an editor. So you'll know, Rebecca, when you get edit notes, it's kind of it's always couched in very nice language and very kind of friendly. And there's the kind of the poo sandwich metaphor of,
Yeah.
this was bad, this was good, this was bad. Or sorry, this is good, this is bad, this is good. This was just your detective's an idiot. That's rubbish. I'm glad someone thought to ask about that at last. I've fired people for doing this. I've fired people for not doing this. I was just
I love that.
end of the second chapter. It was kind of like, wow, okay. Um, but it was all detailed, so it's not like. And what was reassuring was that at no point did he go, okay, you have completely got the wrong end of the stick here. This is not how the investigation would go or how the police would look at it. It was very much like, okay, they need to be thinking about this, or in a lot of places, and this is, I think, what you're talking about in the question. Um, I would have the officers reacting to a sort of slightly hostile or tense situation in the way that we might sort of expect from like a British TV show, kind of trying to diffuse it. And that
Yes.
was alien to them.
Yeah.
Absolutely alien. It was like, no, 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 no. Under any, the tiniest sort of threat level, the tension goes up and they escalate. And, the guns come out and people get thrown to the floor. And he was even sort of saying, there's a good chance this person would be killed in this scenario, where I'm kind of like, I've got them kind of chatting to them and trying to talk them down out of something and not even getting handcuffs out. And he was saying, he was kind of battling me to say, look, they would have guns out, they would have, bullets would be flying at this point. So yeah, so that it was definitely a learning curve for me, and it was a challenge, but it was I certainly got more interested in it along the way than I thought I would be.
Did you implement everything, or is there some creative license involved?
No, I didn't for that exact reason. Yeah, I mean, I sort of said to him, look, I appreciate everything you've said, but there will be points that I won't take, partly because, again, I'm not trying to write a documentary. And partly because there has to be some dramatic license there, as you say. As you know, at times you need things not to be quite 100% realistic, just to move the plot along, or to make characters true to themselves, or just to make the book more enjoyable, really. So, yeah, there were definitely points where I kind of said, I'm going to maybe tone it up a bit, or maybe just keep it as I've had it. But what I didn't want was anyone to pick it up and go, that is, categorically, fundamentally wrong,
Yeah.
and it's kind of broken the book because of it for me, because that would never happen, or that should have happened earlier, or yada yada yada. So um, yeah,
Yeah.
kind of yeah, like with all edits, pick and choose the bits that you think you really need, and then keep some of your own stuff in there.
Yeah. Blackreed Bay, what put the pin in that location for you?
Um, it's fictional. It was
Is
just
it? I didn't actually look.
yeah, it was just. I don't honestly know. It was just kind of playing with words. I'd always had three-word titles, and I was kind of playing with words. And I knew the location was obviously the location is based on a very real sort of area of Long Island, and the story is based on a real set of serial killings in that area. But it was just looking through pictures and videos and images and news reports that just kind of struck me, that kind of image of kind of silhouetted reeds across the bay, and just playing with it from there. Although I just heard the door open behind me. I don't know if it was one of my daughters. And if you do happen to catch me at an event and she's there, then you'll hear me say that she came up with the title. So yeah, we're not allowed to tell the truth on that one.
Right,
Yeah.
no. Okay, onto the writing process. Are you a plotter or a pantser? So, anybody that doesn't understand the writing process, is it, do you write it all out beforehand, as in this is what's happening, or do you just start typing?
I have become a reluctant plotter over the years. So when I started out, my first book I ever wrote was a pure seat of the pants. I had an idea, but it was just go. I made every mistake with that one, and predictably, it never went anywhere. Um, Over the years, I've just naturally ended up planning a little bit more with each book. So it started where I would just write a one-page synopsis, just kind of start, middle, and end, just to give myself a framework to work with, and it would inevitably, within 2 pages, the book would kind of do that and go off on its own. But at least you had something to. So I've always do that now, and I've always just kind of got a little bit more of a structure in my head of or on paper sometimes of where I want to go. And I mean, I've always had lots of research. I always do lots of research because that for me is part of the fun of it, especially if they've all got an element of real life cases in them. So that and also the places, because in almost all instances I've never been to the places where the books were set. So you research online, and then eventually I would actually go and visit them once I had a draft. But the actual plotting of the book I would kind of keep very minimal. But I've built a little bit more with each book now. And it's still, as I say, it's I liken it to a journey. When you plot a route on a map, sometimes you almost always find better ways when you're writing the book, and the book takes on a life of its own, and characters appear that you never planned. But I find it saves a lot of time to have at least some idea of where you want to get to. Even if, and what normally happens to me is the who did it and the why did it changes as well, as you go through the book, but it's still easier to have something there to kind of work with than just hit that point at 60,000 words, the nightmare point that we've all got to, where you go, ah, I'm in a dead end here. I don't know who did it, why, or how to get this book going forward. And I've thrown away weeks of work before because of not having that kind of structure. So yeah.
So the big scene in what was his name's house? Michael Bell's house. Did you know that you were aiming for that?
Yeah, that was very much part of the plan early on. I wanted a kind of big statement murder or killing someone off because I'd never really done that in my other books. Not at least sort of that significant a character that kind of relatively early on. I did nearly shy away from it because I was enjoying writing them together and the dynamic and the way they bounced off each other. Um, but as you sort of see from the end of the book, it became something was going to have to happen at some point, and then I sort of thought, actually, no, let's stick with the plan. And I know that when I sent it to my agent, that was one of the bits that first kind of really grabbed her. She was kind of got an email like, "Oh my God, what have you done?" kind of kind of thing, which I took to be a good thing. But yeah, um, yeah. So that was part of the plan from the start. Yeah.
Yeah, I was listening to the audiobook and I was driving when that happened. And I was like, what? I'm trying to keep my focus on the road, and this is playing out in the car for me. So yeah,
Oh wow,
uh,
awesome.
certainly a stomach punch. Right. We have a question from Divya, who also asked about the female aspect. Are Casey and McT going to get together?
Well, do you know what? I'm really pleased you asked that because you're the first person that's sort of mentioned that, and I have been hinting away at that, and I'm obviously not going to answer, but I'm really pleased that other people are picking up on the hints that are there. So
Brilliant.
yeah, all I'll say is watch this space.
Brilliant. Quick fire, favorite beverage when drinking, writing.
I normally write during the day, so it's just coffee. But yeah, if I'm ever writing in the evening, occasionally a glass of wine sort of helps lube the creative juices a bit. So
Handwriting or typing?
typing, I'm much faster and I can't read my own handwriting. So
Yeah. Are you a lark or an owl? Do you work in the morning or at night?
um, I used to be a night person, but I've got two young kids, so yeah,
You've got
I'm
no
always up
choice now.
early and I write now. Well, obviously when they're at school, yeah, I'm basically yeah. Life has forced me into being a lark. So, yeah.
And favorite place to write? Did you catch that? Favorite place to
Oh,
write?
I mean, if I had the choice, I mean, somewhere overlooking a beautiful beach and cocktail in hand. But normally it's on the dining room table with coloring pens and plates of food and cups and dolls and whatever else the kids have left all over it. So
Just make a bit of space, push them all to the side. Um,
exactly that. Yeah.
is it going to be a series? We know there's another book out which I am going to read. But is there going to be another book after that?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked. So, Shatter Creek has actually moved, so it's not actually out just yet. It was supposed to be out in February, but it's now coming out in May. But this is it. Oh, you can't actually see it because I've got my blurry background on. But
Yeah.
yeah, this is coming out in May and is follows on immediately from Blackreed Bay, picks up directly where the story left off. And yes, there will be a third that is in progress at the moment.
Brilliant. And where
Yeah.
can we just find you online?
You can find me, my website is actually being rebuilt at the moment, but it will be back. So that's rodreynolds.com. Or if you just search Rod Reynolds author, you'll find me on Facebook, or various other places, and you'll find my email on there. You can ping me an email or whatever you want to do.
All right, brilliant. Thanks very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
It really was short notice. I think it was Friday, so thank you. Um,
That's life
I'll
these
let you,
days, right?
I'll let you get off. Nobody wants to hear their book being
Brilliant.
discussed. So thank you so much. This video will be up online later in the week.
Great. Thanks so much for having me, everyone, and thank you for reading.
Thanks,
And
Rod.
yeah, take
Thank
care.
you.
Cheers,
Bye.
guys.
Bye.
That was really interesting. Interesting question, Divya, about and the response that was provided. So I did pick up on it as well in the first one.
I'm surprised he said no one else had asked. I thought it was a very it was very highlighted without being highlighted.
There was something, wasn't there? Once she'd warmed up to him.
Yeah, and then the line about, oh, I never thought I would actually not hate him. It was, yeah.
Yeah. There's several hints.
Yeah, there was. So what did everybody think of the book? Did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed it a lot. Mostly because of the ending.
Yes. A lot of thumbs up there. Who wants to say what they enjoyed about Blackreed Bay?
I'll go.
Go on then.
I wasn't here last week, so I'll go this week. I really liked the story. I love the characters. It was a real moment when the colleague died halfway through. I was like, oh my God. And even towards the end, I was, they was pushing it towards one of the detectives so much. I was still unsure whether it was going to be that one. I'd honestly, I really probably one of the best books I've read out of the series that we've read over these last few years. And I'll definitely read the second one. It's fabulous.
Yeah, I agree. Like Rod said, I don't tend to read much in the way of police procedurals myself anymore, but I really got into this. And I think it was a lot to do with the characters. So yeah. What else did people enjoy about it?
I enjoyed the setting. I thought that was really well done. It was such an interesting place. I thought it was real. I mean, I didn't look it up, but I thought it was real. So yeah, I really liked that.
Yeah, it was really well drawn. I thought the setting. Yes, Clark.
I mean, I enjoyed that it was written by an English bloke. I'm not, and actually, I noticed. I mean, the bloke on the masthead, Chris Whittaker. I mean, he's English. He lives in Buckinghamshire or something, and he writes American set noir. And I just wondered if this was a thing. Maybe this kind of outside view, if this was a coming thing. So yeah, I thought that was nice. I mean, I enjoyed it. It was good.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting when he got the feedback from the American cop about everything that was. No, he wouldn't do that. He wouldn't say that. You can't do that. He'd be arrested for that. I thought that was great. It'd be interesting to know which bits he kept in that the cop wouldn't have agreed with. But yeah. Did anybody not enjoy the book? Divya, you were a bit like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I was not 100. I was more of a 75. It was interesting enough, but yeah, I'm not quite sure what didn't do it for me. Maybe by the end of this discussion, I'll figure it out.
Yes. Yeah. So Tina Grace, our missing girl, did you feel connected to her as a character, even though she wasn't on the page for a huge majority of the book?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think so. And actually, when you were asking me earlier what I liked about it, when I was thinking about it, your question has just prompted me, because one of the things that struck me was that there was a strong perspective from the victim's family, and I think that is sometimes missing from some kind of crime books. And so kind of in answer to your question, yeah, I mean, I think that was the reason why all this, there was all this kind of content from the victim's family perspective, and I thought that worked really well. Yeah, and so that was good. That was one of the things that struck me about it.
Yeah,
and I like the fact that she was never really dead for her mother, or at one point, and then she thought she was dead, and it kind of kept Tina interesting. I really wanted her to be found, whether dead or not.
Yes, I suppose it was because we didn't know either way. So you're as engaged as Casey was with knowing what had actually happened. Clark, you brought up about you don't always find this connection. Do you think that's the thing with crime fiction? If you have a missing person or a murder victim really early on, that you don't connect with that person?
I think it possibly is. Sometimes the victim is just a kind of plot device more as much as anything else. And I think that by including, friends and family and their feelings and what they're going through, I think it makes the victim much more alive, much more a part of the book, actually.
And Tina wasn't this, because sometimes victims can be this model citizen. As we all know from the news, if somebody's died or been killed, oh, they were wonderful, they were amazing, they were great. But Tina was flawed as a person, as were all the characters, to be honest. But do you think that helps that she wasn't just painted as this perfect woman?
Yeah.
It made her come over as more real. I think we're all tainted in various ways, aren't we? So, to have that just made her become more alive in my eyes.
Yeah. I think you do need a more rounded character to connect to them, don't you? Who did you connect with most? Because there was quite a cast of characters. Who did people like reading?
Casey and Cullen together.
I liked that.
Yes.
I did. I liked Cullen as well. But they did really bounce off each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was quite sad, kind of what Rod said about breaking up when the duo was broken up, because I was enjoying that dynamic very much. And I had to check a couple of times when I was reading that it was written by a male author, because I felt like a lot of the nuances about how Casey would have been feeling about things were very, very good. That's why I was like, oh, okay, I guess if I have to ask the question of, is this really a male author? That means it's being done well.
Yes, yeah.
I just thought it was really interesting how he said that he was enjoying writing the two characters bouncing off of each other, and I thought it showed a real strength of him as an author to go through with killing him off, because the characters must be more personal to him than they are to us as readers, and for him to go ahead and kill one of them off, I just thought was a really strong thing to do.
Yes, it was. And it certainly wakes the reader up. What did everybody think about the aftermath of what happened to Cullen with Casey? Was that was that a satisfying way of Casey dealing with it? Because it's a big thing to have somebody killed off like that, but your main character has to continue for the book, but she also has to react realistically. Did you find that was done well?
Well, I thought it was a bit lacking, just a bit. It didn't feel fully complete. And even at the end, I kind of felt like loose ends were being tied up. A little bit like what you said, the main character has to go on. So I completely understand. But at the end of the day, maybe just because of the brevity of it, it felt like bits were hanging out. And and the conclusion of the automated voices, being from her boss was shocking, but almost unbelievable. But I guess that's a good shocking way. But I was like, whoa, okay. It's a lot of neat bows at the top in a way for some things that didn't quite feel complete.
Yeah.
No, I thought that she was reacting like not automatically like a copper, but more like a woman from the death of her partner, and the way she couldn't she was trying to be professional to the core when she was talking to the wife, but it was very hard. I mean, you could tell she really wanted to say a lot more, and I don't think as she had to just sever the link for a while until everything was sorted out, and that was quite hard for her.
Yeah, I think there was a time lapse, wasn't there? I think it was 3 weeks just went past in a sentence, which I think helps the fact that you can then move somebody on from grief when it's a colleague rather than somebody that is really, they were close, but rather than it being a family member.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. Going back to Casey, would you have changed anything about her? Muriel, you're laughing.
Oh no, I'm just thinking she could have done with having more some friends who were not from the police. I don't know, somebody close, not necessarily a boyfriend or a girlfriend, but somebody she could talk to.
I think US police officers are a lot tighter together than UK ones, because there is a lot more life and death for them than there is for UK cops. And I think that's probably, I can't remember what you said, Muriel. What am I answering? Where did that just go?
No, I know, but I feel like the same because I'm trying to remember the story because I've read other books since and it's just getting all mixed up. But I was saying that she could have done with a few more friends who were not in the police. And yeah, it's a bit difficult in America. It's different, sorry, not difficult, different in America.
Yeah, I think they are tighter as a group of people. I know I've only been over there once, and I was still in the job or I'd just retired. And I spoke to a male cop at the Capitol and told him that I'd just retired. And honestly, he could not have been nice. He was like, right, anything you need. Do you need this? Do you need that? Can I help you? Do you want to see this? And they really have an affinity for, they class each other as family. And I think that's might have something to do with why they socialize with each other as well, a lot.
They're also, the police force was brought in a different way in America. It's not at all what happened in Britain, for example, how the force was created.
I know how ours was just about, I think, but not theirs now.
I don't know. I think I was just looking from the news about what they say about the police force over there, where there's a lot of things lacking, like they don't have this experience of what be politically perfect or acceptable, what that means. For example, it's not something that they have to go through over there. Or be careful how you deal with people of certain types, or how you talk about people rather, and how you handle them. And that's why they're so ready with their guns very quickly, or to pin you down on the ground and things. I mean, you wouldn't do that to a disabled person in Britain. You'd see straight away that you can't do that.
Yeah.
They don't have any of that. They just go for it.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting what Rod said about when he was getting the feedback from the cop that he was talking to, that Rod thought that it would be de-escalated by a conversation, whereas the cop said, no, we would be drawing our weapons. And cops are taught that if somebody gets aggressive towards you and ups the ante, then you do have to go in higher, because you need to have the control. You don't want them getting control of you. But with US cops, they have guns, and it's a more serious level up than just putting somebody in handcuffs here.
Yeah.
So that was it. Yeah, that was interesting. How did the setting impact the story, do you think?
I like the contrast between Blackreed Bay being very barren and windswept, and few houses with very few people, and then across the bridge, in my mind, the way it is written, back into sort of civilization and the hubbub and the busyness of it all. So I like that sort of contrast.
I thought it was well done, and I thought it was a real place because I hadn't Googled it before while preparing for this. So it was interesting to find out that it's not real.
But it's very well invented. It reminds me a bit about that place near Denmark. We read about one of the books where there was this island that was made up,
Yes.
and a very good setting, background, everything is given to it, so it doesn't look like it's been made up.
Yeah.
But it's very much based on Long Island, right? So it's
Yeah.
fictional, but semi.
Yeah, so it's an area within a real place. Yeah.
It also was a big factor in the story too. I felt it really became, a really strong character in its own right, almost. And how could she have got off that island? It's there was no way on or off that wasn't looked at by cameras, or so it became a real puzzle in itself, I thought, setting.
Yes. And the cold, the descriptions of the cold, she'd step out of the car and she's fully dressed with her boots on and big coat, and Tina's out there just running out there in a strappy vest top. Yeah, it made me feel cold just thinking about it.
Yeah, you could feel what the characters were feeling. That's the thing that was very good about the descriptions.
Yeah. So she went missing from John Parker's house. What were the thought processes as you were reading about what had happened to her or who had happened to her? Did you have any characters in mind that may have been guilty of this? Nobody thought it was John Parker.
John Parker,
I thought it was
him.
John.
Yeah, I thought it was him.
Because he was fairly sketchy when he wouldn't let them in the house when they first arrived. And I think that was the first indicator that he did have something to do with it. So did anybody make any correct guesses about what had happened to him?
No, I mean, I thought it was, yeah. I thought it was just a thing about the middle classes, some strange, maybe, I don't know, ring of people using girls, but not necessarily attached to the police.
The McTeague was always talking about what was his name? I've had to write them all down. Ray Coletti. What were your thoughts on Ray and McTeague when they were first interacting?
I think that Rod Reynolds did a good job of setting that up, because Ray was set up originally as, nice bloke, and McTeague as this sort of someone that everyone hated. And actually, I think Rod Reynolds did a good job of it's obviously set up to reverse that during the plot, and I think he did a good job of both setting up and doing that reversal. I mean, I think that I always thought that she would become closer to McTeague and learn to love him. But I didn't think that Ray would be sacrificed as
No.
as the baddie. And I didn't see Hanrahan at all. In fact, I thought the Hanrahan twist was a sort of a little twist too far, maybe for me. Anyway, I'd have been quite happy for Ray to just be the evil mastermind. But I thought that was done well. The
Well,
McTeague
yeah.
Ray
I
thing.
couldn't believe that Ray was. I still wouldn't believe it because I kept seeing this man who was her mentor, and he was really kind to her. And in the end, when he told her that yes, he was actually trying to create a whole a document, a file to so that the big boss would be dropped into it, but not Cullen, for example. And I mean, he was bad, but he was still good to the ones who believed in him,
I mean,
like Casey.
Ray did imply that he was kind of forced into it by
Yeah.
Hanran.
Mm.
Yeah, we got attached to Ray and Cullen because we saw their public facing personas that Casey saw. So it is a bit of it was a very good twist that there's somebody else behind, which I think there is with everybody you meet. That you always put your best foot forward, don't you? And we all have many faces depending on who we're engaging with. So it was interesting to see.
But I did guess when Cullen got that phone call the night before that it was Ray, when Ray asked her the questions about, did he tell you who phoned him? You know, what it was about? No, he just looked upset, and it never occurred to her, but straight away to me, McTeague must be right somewhere.
I actually liked that it didn't just end at Ray, so that he could still be a bit of a good guy, or like there was some context as to where this started, because I think if not for that, it would really have felt very out of character for him. And actually right till the end when she found him at the locker, and I think he said something like, "You don't understand," or something. I thought, oh, we really don't understand. He's about to explain how this has nothing to do with him at all. So even though the chief was a bit far-fetched, it was good to have that extra layer. Though I must say, hearing everyone discuss it, I'm starting to appreciate it more and more.
Yeah. So it was a surprise to everybody how it played out. Were you satisfied with the ending, with what had happened to Tina and within the police force itself?
I wasn't super satisfied with Tina's explanation. I understand it just needed to be wrapped up to some extent, but how she got out of the car and then she managed to run and then take a bus to Tennessee, I was like, oh, okay. I didn't quite see that part happening. But in terms of the happening with the boss, the lieutenant, I was okay with that.
So will you read the next one that's due out in May? I thought it was already out because it is on Goodreads as February.
Shatter Creek, is it?
Shatter, yeah, I think so. Shatter Creek.
Yeah.
Our libraries actually already have it on order here in Australia. Yeah.
Mine as well.
I wonder if Australia has different publication dates though, because they do sometimes, don't they?
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
My library says it's on order, but coming in May.
Right. That's it then. So some of us have looked up whether we can get it already. That's a positive sign for one of our reads that we're looking up when it's out. Is there anything else you want to discuss about this book? That because there was so much, I think, happened, that I'm a bit worried that I've kind of skipped over something you want to say.
I just
I think,
want to say
oh, go
that
ahead.
Tina coming to Casey first to then go to her mom was quite a nice move. I don't know if in real life she would have bothered. I mean, her mother told her that Casey was behind most of the encouragement, but still, she's only a policewoman after all.
But she hadn't given up and maybe knew that. What were you going to say, Divya?
Oh, I was just gonna say that from the get-go on my book, it said book one in a series on Casey Wray. And so I was like, okay, I actually thought maybe there was already more than one book, but I felt that the characters were set up for continuation. Like that guy Billy and the other cop whose name I cannot remember right now. I just felt like, yeah, so that's also why I was a bit confused that it didn't end with McTeague and then continue on there. But I did feel in general the characters were set up and how he kept saying that I'm going to leave the department to you. I mean, not the department, but the precinct to you, things like that. It was very forward moving, so more space to grow was, yeah.
I think Billy is Casey's new partner in the next book.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I read
Which
the
one's
blurb.
Billy?
I read the blurb on Amazon.
Which one's Billy?
He's the kind of Lothario, the young police officer. Is he a bit of a Lothario? I think he is.
He's the one looking up girls when he's trying to look up evidence or take interviews.
Yeah, talks to somebody on the phone and thinks they're good looking.
Yeah.
That's the one. That's the one. Yeah.
That's Billy.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember him now. Anything else on the book? So it's been a resounding success this month.
Oh, sorry. I did want to add that after the last book we read, this time I actually started thinking about what race the characters were.
Yes, so did I.
The last one, and I was trying to figure out how I was like, I've never thought about this before, but now I am. And there's a cop show called Castle I watch on TV, and a part of it was like I found some resemblance, so I started imagining are they the same character races as from the show? So
right, yes,
Yeah.
I Castle, the old one with him that's in. He was in Firefly and is in Lotus.
Yes. Yes, I kept imagining Casey as Kate Beckett, and yeah.
What did you find? I can't remember there being descriptions of any of them other than hairstyles.
No, there weren't. So that's what I started wondering about because there were no descriptions.
Yeah, I was thinking Casey could be black for a change, because of all the being a woman and all the slack she kept getting from her colleagues. So maybe she was a black girl, black woman, but she could be a white one as much.
I thought maybe Ray actually the
Black.
yeah.
Yeah, that was also possible. The two of them actually.
There wasn't a physical description of Casey herself, was there? Because it was from her point of view.
No, it was not. It's just the surnames, I think, that gave you an idea that Ray may have been white because of Italian origin, for example, but not necessarily.
No, it is interesting, and harking back to that last book, it does make you think. And that's what I loved about it. Not everybody enjoyed that book, but I loved it for the differences within the two stories. So yeah. Interesting point, Divya.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to cut anybody off, but does anybody want anything to say before I stop the recording?
No.
Okay. We will stop this because I don't want to